Every year, an estimated $5 trillion of dirty money is illegally laundered around the world. And as criminals become ever more sophisticated, the crime of money laundering gets harder to police. Here too, authorities are grappling with the problem. Right now, nearly $30 million is sitting idle in a series of ANZ bank accounts set up by a group of Russians during a visit to the Gold Coast, where it went on a lavish spending spree, using what federal police say were the proceeds of crime. Lawyers for the Russians insist their clients are legitimate business people wanting to invest in Queensland. The mind boggles. David Lewis reports from the Gold Coast.
It's the 30th of December 2010 and a group of Russian nationals touches down in Brisbane on Korean Air Flight 123 from Seoul. Entering Australia on tourist visas, they make their way to the Gold Coast. The Russians have arrived in time for New Year's Eve, but they're not just here for a holiday.
What's been alleged is that the Russians engaged in money laundering.
The Russians are from Irkutsk in Siberia. Their visa applications state they work for a company that mines gemstones. There are 9 in the group, including 3 married couples. Over the next 2 years, they will all travel to the Gold Coast at least once, but on this occasion, just 5 make the journey. During their stay, Andrei Gudkov and Vladimir Strelnikov visit a bank in Surfers Paradise and each open 2 Visa debit card accounts. There's little activity at first, but hundreds of thousands of dollars soon come pouring in from overseas.
Russia is certainly a hotspot for various financial crimes, including internet fraud, money laundering, drugs and so forth. But of course what's happened here is that the dirty money, or alleged dirty money, which allegedly comes from Russia, they've used Australian banks, or Australian bank, in order to launder it.
The Russians eventually opened 24 accounts at the same bank. The massive deposits from overseas keep coming, and by December last year, the group has accumulated almost $30 million. Bank account transaction records reveal the Russians like to shop and have expensive tastes. They bought almost $290,000 worth of luxury clothing at one retailer, nearly $128,000 worth of jewellery, and more than $90,000 worth of flights to Thailand, Dubai, Italy, Switzerland and Australia. While they were living the high life, Australian authorities were on alert.
There's a number of features that make it suspicious. Firstly, the huge amount of money involved, no reasonable explanation as to where that money came from, and that the declared income of the account holders was incompatible with the amount of money in those accounts.
According to their tourist visas, Irina Strelnikova earns the equivalent of just 11,000 Australian dollars per year, while Sergei Kostyukov has the highest salary of around 65,000. And yet, between them, they have almost $2 million. That simply doesn't add up, according to international money laundering expert Dr. David Chaikin.
If you're earning less than $100,000 and you're bringing in $30 million, that doesn't make sense at all.
The AFP won't discuss this case publicly. However, a police affidavit shows they traced the money back to 8 foreign companies with bank accounts in Hong Kong and mainland China. Funds were wired to the Australian bank accounts, each transaction listed as payment for goods. But when Customs launched an investigation, it found no records of those companies ever sending or receiving goods valued at more than $2,000. The Federal Police concluded the source of the funds is not legitimate. Last December, the Australian Federal Police froze the 24 bank accounts under the Proceeds of Crime Act. The Russians are no longer in the country and are not subject to any criminal charges. But the District Court of Queensland has ordered them to provide sworn statements explaining the source of their money. If their case fails to persuade the court, their $30 million fortune will be confiscated by the Commonwealth.
There is so much money that escapes, that gets through the net.
Criminologist John Walker has worked for the United Nations and AUSTRAC, the organisation responsible for monitoring financial transactions. He says it's dead easy to launder money and get away with it, including in Australia.
It's actually a very good place to launder money in Australia, not because there are deficiencies with what AUSTRAC do, it's because this is such a good place to invest. And if you make your transactions look legitimate, then the banks and law enforcement are not going to raise suspicions.
Australian banks have to report every international money transfer to AUSTRAC.
Our record on collection of financial intelligence is second to none in the world. The issue really is to what extent do we use that intelligence and the investigative skills of the AFP and other law enforcement agencies to effectively enforce not just anti-money laundering laws, but financial crimes in general. And in that respect, our record is not so good.
A complex money laundering scheme in Western Australia and Victoria was allegedly operating for a decade before it was finally exposed last week.
These people are sophisticated. They do receive advice from professional entities such as lawyers, accountants and the like for the specific purpose of avoiding and evading law enforcement.
Police say those responsible used a market garden in Perth as a front company for the scheme. Foreign workers were underpaid and the profits were then laundered through other businesses, such as nightclubs and karaoke bars.
This entity is very much motivated by greed, and anything they can get their hands on, they think they can turn a profit in, they will do it, and the workforce exploitation, I suppose, is part of that equation as well.
That this could go on for so long comes as no surprise to John Walker.
If you can make your transactions look legitimate, then you can launder as much as you like anywhere on the planet.
In Queensland, lawyers for the 9 Russian nationals plan to vigorously defend their clients in the District Court.
None of our clients has been charged with any criminal offence in Australia, Russia or elsewhere. They are legitimate businessmen involved in the mining industry and the food processing industry in Russia and other countries.
If the AFP is successful, it will be the agency's largest ever seizure of laundered money in a case involving no criminal charges.